they will start spewing things at you. The other parent says this about you, and as if they believe it. And it's very, very triggering because you feel like, okay, I got away from this person and now my kid is like a mini me of them. And how do I deal with this? And so the instinct is to often correct the record or say, no, that's not true.
Yeah.
This is what it is. Or I didn't do that. Or I did do this.
Absolutely. Of course it is.
Right.
Yeah.
It's one of the worst things you can do.
Welcome back to Raising Men. Parenting is hard at the best of times, but it takes on uniquely difficult challenges in the middle of a storm of a high conflict divorce. So how do you provide emotional safety and moral stability to your son when your partner becomes your opponent? Our guest today is Lisa Johnson. She's the co-founder of Been There, Got Out, and the author of a new book, When Your Ex Turns Your Kids Against You. Lisa is a high conflict divorce strategist and a certified domestic violence advocate who has turned a grueling personal journey into a roadmap for others. Lisa's testimony was instrumental in passing Jennifer's Law in Connecticut, which expanded the legal definition of domestic violence to include coercive control, which is a pernicious form of abuse. She's here to help us tackle some tough questions hopefully we won't have to face. But Lisa's inspiring personal story and her lessons are instructed to parents in healthy relationships also. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Wow, Shawn, what an introduction. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I find your story is absolutely amazing. So why don't you just start with sharing with us?
All right. So just tell me where to start because I am a talker and I.
That's great.
Did I start at the end of my
let's
relationship
begin at the
or
beginning.
the beginning?
At some point, you were married, you had kids,
Yep.
and it started going sour. What happened?
Well, actually, I didn't think it started going sour. It was kind of an explosion. I basically was with my ex for 20 years. We were married for nearly 18. I thought he was my best friend. We got along pretty well. We had 2 kids together. Red flags, hindsight's always 2020. But
Sure.
2 years before our actual divorce, I discovered that he had been living a double life, that he had been soliciting other women for the entire relationship. Things started coming out that were the tip of the iceberg, and it was just more and more and more. And I was absolutely flabbergasted.
Yeah.
And so we decided, in my mind at the time, it was like, I will do anything to keep this family together because I had the idea that you had to have an intact family or the kids' lives would be ruined. And my ex used to say that because he knew that mattered so much to me. He said, if you divorce me, you're going to ruin their lives. So I stayed in it. It took 2 years, to finally get out. But we went through 3 rounds of couples counseling, all kinds of crazy, crazy stuff. And then when I finally met with a divorce attorney, he told me within 20 minutes, yours is going to be one of the really bad ones. And I thought, that is crazy. Like, how did he know that? But I always say, I really believed at the time that my ex was a good person who had done some bad things. I thought this would be amicable. We had spent 2 years trying to work things out. And that we would go to mediation, it would be done. I remember being terrified that my divorce was going to cost $10,000. I had heard that was the average. It cost 10 times that amount in the first year. And then I was in court for 10 years total. So my divorce attorney was right. It cost $100,000 that first year and took a full year. And at the end of that year, my divorce attorney, who became like one of my best friends that year, of course, because we had such an intimate relationship because we spent so much time together, he said, he is not going to follow this agreement. You cannot afford me. He's going to financially decimate you. He's going to continue to do it. So you need to go on your own. I'll be here in the background, but we'll probably get you some paralegal if you need it. And you need to start building your case now. So he was right. I went on my path, my pro se or self-represented journey. It took about 1 year and 9 months for me to sort of catch my breath and put together a really powerful case. And then I went back pro se or pro per in California, it's also called. and then another 7.5 years, about 100-ish court appearances in 2 states, including him appealing 4 times, me representing myself at the appellate court level, even though I was told, "Oh, you better not do that because it's a really big deal," and me saying, "Well, I don't wanna spend $15,000 to have someone else speak for me when I've already done so well."
Yeah.
So, not only won that case, but then, it was notable enough to be published as case law. So that's one of my biggest triumphs because for a lawyer to get published is a really big deal. And
Right.
everyone I've ever spoken to is like, I have never heard of a pro se getting published. So that was something. Then, of course, the Jennifer's Law, being involved with that. And then my ex actually sued my partner and I for $4 million in defamation in civil court. That was like year 9 when it was
Wow.
like almost ending, so we got that thrown out finally, but it was just like having a terrorist for all those years, and to this day still sometimes going to the mailbox I flinch because I'm like, what fresh hell might be awaiting me, you know, things like that, but
Oh, that's
it's
brutal. And it's not, I mean, you're you're entwined forever because you have kids with this
yeah.
person. And so it's not just like getting married. You have kids too. And, that's the father of your children. I mean, it's not like you can just not deal with each other.
No, and that did not go as planned either.
Tell me about
Because
that.
so we went to when I first met my lawyer, he said, "I think the best thing for you to do is go to mediation and
Yeah.
just have me in the background. Don't even tell your ex that you have an attorney. Just meet
Yeah.
individually with a mediator." And this is something we advise to our clients who can handle it. And so we managed to get a really good parenting plan that said we had joint physical and legal custody, meaning we shared decisions. But my ex never showed up. He
Oh,
completely just left. He didn't do a single visitation. I was trying to reach him and I was like, "Where are you?" Right before well, actually it might have been, I don't remember if it was the day we told the kids that we were getting a divorce, but he had a key ring, and like on your key ring sometimes you have those little cards like for the supermarket or like the library, things like that you kind of
right.
scan. So I distinctly remember when it was like we're getting a divorce right in front of our son, who was maybe 14 at the time.
Mhm.
He had a key ring for the YMCA and the library because he used to take our son to the library and drop him off at the YMCA. And he took them off and threw them on the table and said, "I guess I don't need these anymore." And I was like, "What?" And he basically
Wow.
walked out. And especially for those first 10 days, he just disappeared. The kids were calling him, emailing him. He wasn't answering. And he went and moved in with his father, and I imagine he was doing a lot of online fantasy dating, who knows what, but he'd just
Mhm.
gone, and so I felt like I was left to clean up this huge mess, and I didn't even know what to say to the kids because I really thought, like, we're both gonna co-parent, and you're gonna find a place, and you're gonna be happy to have them, and I was looking forward to having some weekends to myself finally
Yeah.
and doing my thing, and he just was gone. So that was absolutely heartbreaking. That was the scariest thing in my life because remember, I was already terrified of the relationship ending and having a non-intact family ruin their lives, but I
Yeah.
never imagined they have a parent that just abandoned them.
Yeah, and then, I mean, fatherhood absence is linked to higher delinquency, to mental health issues, to how people are doing in school, and overall long-term effects. And you just have to be looking at that and thinking, "My gosh, what do I do?"
Yeah. Yeah. It was really bad. And it was right before Easter. And I think it was like right before Easter break that we actually told the kids.
Mhm.
And so I was scrambling trying to find therapists. We have this thing in town. It's called Kids in Crisis. It's like this resource place for families. I remember going down there with the kids and all these other things were closed, and I was just like, I need names of therapists, and I didn't even know where to start. And I was thinking we got to get like individual therapists for them. And
Yeah.
I remember my daughter, we couldn't find like a really good one right away, but for my son, I got so lucky. I found this guy, Mark, who was like a former Hell's Angel type. He's like this huge guy, and he'd show up on this big motorcycle. He had dropped out of high school, but he had like 2 master's degrees, and he was like
Wow.
big and gruff. And he and my son really, really connected. And but they didn't talk about like therapeutic stuff. They talk
Sure.
about debate and politics and stuff that like Izzy would talk about with his father in the past.
Yeah.
So I remember thinking like, when are they going to get to the stuff? I remember asking Mark about it, and he said, "Let me do my job. Like, I know what
Right.
I'm doing, but the thing I need to do with your son, because of what he's dealt with, is we need to just establish that rapport, and then we'll get to that stuff later." But it was really hard. I mean, my son got very aggressive. I didn't understand what was happening, but he would lash out at me. And I remember making threats sometimes, being like, I can't, because my son's like a lot bigger than me at the time too. I was like, I'm going to have to take you to Kids in Crisis because like I can't, I don't know how to deal with you. And I remember calling Mark one night. He's like, that is the last thing you do, because
Right.
right now Izzy's dealing with a parent that's walked out of his life. And for you to also say, I can't deal with you, that's the worst. So it's really healthy that he's expressing this anger and aggression, because he's getting it out.
Yeah.
So you got to be strong, and you got to stand by him, and it'll ride through, and then we can really start getting to the work. And he was so right, but it was terrifying.
That has to be one of the hardest things that you just have to deal with, because you're facing this personal chaos outside of that. And then now your son is acting the same way, almost being your enemy. But what he's seeking is connection.
Right? I mean,
And
he didn't
you've,
want to be, he wanted to say, like, testing, are you going to stay with me?
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we still like we just recently repainted his room, and the door has like all of these marks on it. And I said, I want to leave. I want to leave the door. He also has all these funky bumper stickers from when he was a kid that I want to keep. But I'm
Yeah.
like, it reminds me of how far we've come.
Yeah. I had a guest named Tasha Shore,
Oh,
and
I know her.
oh, okay,
She
great.
answered really
Yeah.
peacefully. I've interviewed her a couple of times.
She's spectacular.
She
And
is.
she talks a lot about aggression.
Yes.
And she says that aggression is a fear response.
Yeah.
And the way that I analyze your son's behavior at that time, from what you've told me, in that context, is he was afraid. He was afraid. He's just lost his father. He's
Uh-huh.
afraid that he's going to lose his mother. He doesn't know what the world is going to look like. And the only reflex he has is aggression. And it's a way of testing you, it's a way of seeking connection. And I just can't believe how fortunate you were to have that therapist in your life at that time.
I know.
It's almost like divine intervention.
I know, guardian angel. I still send him holiday cards. I think he's
It's
in, like,
amazing.
Alaska or Washington State, but I'm like, you helped our family so much."
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So we got to the point where it's been 2 years down the road. We've got the divorce finalized, and then so there were another 8 years of just fighting and fighting and fighting. How did it end? How did it eventually stop?
Well, I mean, so what happened was, and I'm very lucky because I didn't have a custody battle. I have to
Mhm.
say that my son actually said something really heartbreaking a few years later. He was like, "I wish you had had a custody battle,
Mm,
because then he at least would have cared enough to fight you for us," and he didn't. So that
yeah.
was really sad. But the thing that brought us back, that I took him back to court for, was college. So I used to be a high school English teacher. I have a master's degree. Education is one of my core values. Like,
Yes.
everything is education.
Yes.
And growing up, when the kids were growing up, we used to see his family every week, and get together with his super rich dad, who was paying for his other grandson's college education. And he used to be like, I'm going to pay for your kid's college education. We'd all be like, oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And
Mm,
of course, he never did it. And
Right.
so during the time as we were, when my ex and I were still together, he said, "We don't need to do a 529 college plan because my dad's going to pay for it." The grandfather said he'd take care of the grandkids' education. So let's take that money and put it into my retirement account. That'll be
Um,
ours. And we'll use your money for the day-to-day expenses, like my income. So you
yeah.
can imagine what happened. Of course, he kept the entire retirement. His father refused to pay, and he refused to pay. And that was another threat. He had said, "If you divorce me, I'm not paying for our kids' college education." I was just like, not that he would pay only for it, but he's like, "I'm not paying a penny."
Right.
And I was so angry about that because I felt like his father broke his word, he broke his word. We put
Yeah.
language in our agreement that said had we stayed together, of course we would have supported our children's college education. He has a college degree too. And I felt like it was really punishing the kids to hurt me financially by taking that stance. So when I went back to court, it was for what's called an educational support order. And in our state, especially because I had that language in the order that said, had we stayed together, we both would have contributed. It was just a matter of deciding percentages. So I went back as a pro se and dealt with that and did very well. But it took it took like 9 months or actually, no, it took a year because it was December of 2017 and I got orders in 2018. Um, and then he wouldn't comply. He just wouldn't pay his share. And so that was more years in court. And also in the process, um, I already knew that he hadn't told the truth on what his called his financial affidavits. So we
Yeah.
also put protective language in that said the numbers for child support and alimony are based on what he provided on the legal documents. But if it ever is determined that there was additional income, that will trigger a modification. So of course,
Yeah.
he had 14 rental properties. He kept putting 0 as income. I was like,
It
"I'll
can't
deal
be
with
true.
you later," and I
Yeah.
did, and so I took that back too and ended up winning that stuff as well. So
Wow.
all of that, those 3 motions plus COVID, plus, him being angry and vengeful about the fact that, why should he have to contribute anything since we got a divorce, that was what kept us in court all those years. It was maddening.
How destructive. I mean, it's just, rather than spending all that energy, rather than spending all that money fighting, just come to an arrangement.
Well, I always say that his lawyer financially abused him far worse than I ever could ever anyone because his lawyer
Yeah.
should have just said, "Follow the order. Just pay what you're supposed to. You don't need to pay me for all these years and all these appearances.
Right.
Just follow
It's
the order." I
cheaper
mean,
just to
that's
follow
what
the order.
happened. Yeah, he
Yeah.
didn't follow the order. It was an agreement. It's stronger than a court order. He agreed to do these things. And he
Yeah.
just was like, I don't have to. So he ended up spending probably 4 or 6 times as much as what he would have had to do had he just followed the order. But that's why these cases are very, very different. And in my career with my partner Chris, we only deal with these crazy cases because they
Mhm.
have to be handled very delicately and very differently than normal divorce. Because when we talk about what goes on with us and our clients talk about their stories, no one could believe it because it defies logic. Why would somebody choose to spend 6 times the amount if they had just followed the order? It's because there's other psychological things going on,
Yeah.
including what's
A
called
normal
clingy
person with
engagement.
a normally healthy relationship can't fathom
Right.
that it could go like that because it makes no sense. It's a lose-lose. Why would anyone opt for that? And it's obvious. It's not like the data's not there.
Right. And
You
people
know?
think, well, everybody loves their kids. Like, who would do something like that? Why would you
Right. I
do that?
can't imagine abandoning my kids. That
It
would be if
happens.
I got a divorce,
Yeah.
I'd
Right.
I I'd be worried about making sure that I had access to my children.
That's how 85-ish plus percent of people are. But then there's this chunk of us that it's not like that feel very alone and very isolated because you say what's going on and people are like, it must be
They almost
something
don't
with
believe you.
you.
They
Yeah.
almost say, "What have you done to like, what is his side?"
Right. What have you done to deserve this? They don't
Right.
understand the nature of domestic violence. They don't understand
Yeah.
personality disorders. You know, it's just, but it's not the same. And there's so many people dealing with this kind of stuff.
So now you've pivoted. You're leveraging this decade-long war story
Mhm.
as a way to help people avoid and strategize in their own situations. Is that right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
love that.
been there, got out.
Yeah, I love that. So, what would you have done differently, or what should you have done differently,
Okay, how much
if you
time do
had this situation to live over again?
I mean, there's so many things I would have done differently. Um, but I think the first one was I would have taken strategic oversight of my case. Well, first of all, no, backing up before that, I would have known what narcissism was. I would have
Mm,
known a bit more about addiction. I wouldn't have
okay.
thought I have to do this logically, and I would have educated myself a lot more. There's an excellent book called Splitting by a guy named Bill Eddy, and it's about dealing with narcissistic and borderline personality disorders during a divorce. I unfortunately found that book like a year and a half after I got divorced, after that first year, but it was right before my partner Chris, whose divorce took 3 years,
Wow.
hit that book made him finally cross the finish line, and the author of its name is Bill Eddy. He is a former social worker turned high conflict family lawyer turned founder of what's called the High Conflict Institute, and I think he's actually based in San Diego. But,
No
anyway, now
kidding.
he works with, yeah, governments and businesses to reduce the level of conflict, and he actually wrote the foreword to our upcoming book, which is very, very exciting. But anyway, so there's ways to deal with these people very, very differently, and I think I would have, been able to educate my lawyer was wonderful, but neither of us knew what we were dealing with, and we didn't understand that the more engagement we had, just dragged it out longer. So I think we wouldn't have
Yeah.
negotiated as much. I would have taken a firmer stance on certain things. I would have communicated differently. I think I would have stroked my ex's ego a lot more. I
Mm,
would have, uh, yeah. I mean, the post judgment stuff, like all those years, maybe there could have been stuff I would have, but that was really financial, and that was him not following the order. But,
yeah.
um, but we see a lot of mistakes made in terms of communication from the very beginning.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I
Yeah.
can imagine I can imagine having a coach. If that's your
Yeah.
situation, if you're in that situation, having a coach or having someone, I can imagine that it would be a very lonely experience, and that
It
having
is.
someone like you would be tremendously helpful.
Yeah, well, I think because people see things on TV, they hear what we call Barstool counsel, like friends and
Yeah.
other people saying, "Oh, well, this is what you should do. This is what I did, or this is what someone I know did," but
Right.
they don't understand like these cases are very, very different, and even each of the high conflict cases are different. So we often say to our clients, like, you know your ex better than anyone. And no one else has to live with the consequences
Mm,
of the decisions you make now except for you and your family. So it's really, really important to understand what's going on, to understand every stage of the process, to not feel pressured into making decisions just because you're exhausted, to think about the long term consequences, to realize like you can't just cut someone out of your kids' lives. Like you have to figure out a way to co parent because even people in jail have parenting rights, and
yeah,
the impact on your children is not just till they're 18, it's for the rest of their lives.
absolutely.
Um, my kids actually did recently, reconnect with their father. Well, I thought it was like a done, like he was gone,
Yeah.
but that's one of my friends was telling me the other day, she said, "It's almost like when a child's been adopted, no matter how wonderful their adoptive parents are, they're still curious. So even when someone has left you,
Yeah.
you still wanna, you wanna know and stuff." And so but I do think that a lot of the decisions he made in terms of how he treated them or neglected them is impacting, whatever happens moving forward. So,
Of course, yeah,
yeah, but it's
there's gonna be a
interesting.
lack of trust there.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting because I think my son has a very strong personality,
Mm,
and early on I thought, my daughter's the one who's, like, really, really sensitive, and she'll be affected more, but now they're young adults, and I actually think the opposite. I think my son is a lot more vulnerable,
yeah,
maybe because he's a boy,
yeah,
and also the relationship that he had in the beginning, and he was the one who chased after his father, and I
mm,
also see things in my partner, Chris, whose father abandoned him, when his parents got a divorce, and he always was kind of chasing love, and I kind of worry about that. I mean, because that's what attracted Chris, my partner, to his ex, you know,
Yeah.
getting involved with people who are more avoidant. And so I
Yeah.
hope that doesn't happen. I mean, my son's had relationships and stuff, but now that his dad is kind of intermittently back, I wonder, I'm always worried that he's gonna get hurt again.
Yeah.
So, we'll see. It's
Yeah.
hard.
And yeah, you got to take that risk, I think.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
can't
I
do
mean,
anything. I mean, it's his life, and
what are
he's
you
a
going to
grown
do?
up.
That's right. How do you, how did you help your son process the trauma of the high conflict divorce? Um, without him feeling like he has to man up and bury his feelings and stuff.
Yeah, so
Did
that
you manage to thread that needle?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question, and actually years ago when my son was over the age of 18, he was asked to be on a podcast called Slam the Gavel, where the interviewer was asking about what it was like being the child of a high conflict divorce.
Wow.
And we gathered a bunch of questions from our Instagram audience at the time of what people wanted to know if you could ask a child who's an adult. And the most popular question was, what did your mom do to help you get through this?
Yeah.
Um, I know it for me, and I'll tell you his answer in a second, but for me, the most important thing was shielding him from it. Like, not talking about stuff with his dad, not talking about stuff with court. I mean, they saw me in court. Or they knew that I was busy with court, but, like, I'd go to my
Right.
dad's office, in another location and spread stuff out. I didn't talk about it with them. I just, um, did what I had to do, and it's interesting because my son said just, like, a year ago, he said, "Oh, I didn't know that dad sued you for defamation, like, I didn't." And I said, "Oh,
Wow.
good.
Yeah.
You didn't know that." But when he was asked the question on the podcast, "What did your mom do? What helped you the most?" He said, "She kept it together." So I
Mm.
think me getting support for myself, taking care of myself, that was the best thing that I did for both Izzy and his sister because he never felt emotionally responsible for me. I think one time very early in the process, they made some comment. I was driving them to school and I started crying. And I'm like pretty stoic. And they
Yeah.
both were like, "Oh my God, oh my God, I'm so sorry, mom, I'm so sorry." But I was just like, but I really tried to not show my sadness to them and deal with stuff with friends. I had a trauma therapist because I just didn't want them to feel like they had to take care of me, and apparently they didn't. So that's really really good. So
That's
self
fantastic.
regulation,
Yeah.
that's
Well, and
important.
just from my conversations with other guests, I can tell you that finding your son men, good role models to spend time with, and just the more time that they can spend with healthy men, um, I I I I just know that that made a difference. And
Yes,
you're
and
described this.
now you just made me think about that.
Yeah.
So my dad and I and part of what's been so heartbreaking for me is my dad and I are really, really close. My dad's 85. He's an identical twin. My dad and I have lunch every single week. We meet
Oh
and
my
have
gosh,
lunch
that's
together.
amazing. I love
Yeah.
this.
And so, and I almost it's like I have 2 dads because of the identical twin thing, and they work together, and they dress the same sometimes, it's really wild. They
Amazing. Oh my
wrestle,
gosh, how
they
great is
don't
that?
wrestle now, they're, like, kind of,
Yeah,
slightly falling
85 is a
apart.
little old to still be
Yeah.
wrestling.
But my dad and I have always been really, really close, and
Yeah.
so I feel heartbroken that my kids don't have that, but my dad was there for my kids, and while I was dealing with all this, I had to work on the weekends, and so my son he actually became this national debate champion, so he's always having to go to debates, so I couldn't drive him, and part of my he kind of resents it, but I'm like, "Actually, this was good for you, is I can't do it, you're gonna have to figure it out," and so he learned how
Mm.
to use public transportation, but my dad would drive him, like, we'd figure out a way my dad would pick him up and take him and his friends and stuff, so he stepped in a lot as that role model, and also parental figure for Izzy. And another
Yeah.
thing was with debate itself. So Izzy and his sister went to a high school, that didn't have sports. It was like this weird magnet school, but it
Huh.
focused on technology
Mm.
and, technology and engineering. And so, And they didn't have sports, but their big thing was the debate team. That was like the football team from Greece, where it's like,
Sure.
wow, you're on the debate team. So
Sure.
Izzy was the debate captain, and his debate coach, who I have to get in touch with, I just remembered. His debate coach became like a father figure, and Izzy was born arguing. So this man like really embraced that talent, which is
Yeah.
drove me crazy a lot. Um, and so he really helped Izzy shine. And Izzy actually was the speaker at his graduation, which unfortunately his father didn't even come to. But
Wow.
during his speech, which was heartbreaking, he talked about how his father wasn't there, but his debate coach really stepped up for him and that he really appreciated having that man in his life. So it is so important to have those male figures that can step in for boys and make them feel valued.
Yeah. Yeah, that's you're so fortunate to have found role models like that and people like that or um that I know that made a difference just from all the people I've talked to.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the new book. It's called When Your Ex Turns Your Kids Against You.
Yeah.
And yeah, oh, I love it. Thank you. Yes. You address a nightmare for many parents, I can imagine. What are the practical tools that a parent can use to maintain the role model status, to not vilify the other parent, but while the other parent is actively trying to dismantle it?
This is such a huge topic, and unfortunately, I think again it comes down to education and understanding what alienation means, because it usually starts while you're still in the relationship with the person, like
Right.
very subtle undermining, like making jokes about you to your kids, minimizing your authority. I think back to when I was still in my relationship when Izzy was a really little boy, and he would do something that he got in trouble for, and my background as a teacher, I'd be like, no, like you're sitting down, like you're not allowed to do whatever it was.
Right.
And my ex would be like, oh, no, 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 you don't need to listen to your mom, you can take it back, Izzy. And it not only undermined my attempts to discipline him, and I'm not talking about punishment, but just to teach him. But
Yeah.
Izzy grew up like pushing boundaries, and I think it's
Yeah.
harmed him in a
Of
lot
course
of
he did.
ways because he's just like, "Oh, I can just apologize and everything's all better." And it's like made him a little bit less sensitive to people's feelings. It's not just
Mm.
how you feel and what you think, it's about the responses to other people and
Yeah.
developing that empathy. So, that was a form of alienation, almost like, "Oh, mom's really cranky, we don't need to listen to her. She's just this," or, "Oh, you can take it back." I didn't know what was happening at the time, but
Mm.
that's one of those things,
Yeah, and you
like
don't even
little
notice that a
things.
boundary. You don't even realize that that means that they're not on your side, and that the other thing, the thing where you're working together and you have each other's backs, and no matter what, even if you're wrong, they're gonna back you up, and then you're gonna have a chat about it later. That experience is so foreign to you, you don't even know that it's a possibility.
Yeah, yeah, and you just think, "Okay, maybe we just have different parenting styles," but
Right.
it's establishing what's called loyalty conflicts, where the kid
Mm.
gravitates more towards one parent than the other, and especially the target parent is made to feel like they did something wrong. And so as you get out of the, post-separation, and a lot of times with our clients, it happens while they're still together, where the kids cut off one parent who still lives in the house, and they want nothing to do with them as soon as there's like a sign that there's going to be a separation, because they're not allowed to love both of you. Again,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about normal. I'm talking about where there's like a
This
personality
pathological
disorder.
situation. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So understanding all about what it actually means is going to be very helpful moving forward, because
Mhm.
often once you do separate and the kid comes back from the other parent's house, they will start spewing things at you. The other parent says this about you, and as if they believe it. And it's very, very triggering, because you feel like, okay, I got away from this person and now my kid is like a mini me of them. And how do I deal with this? And so the instinct is to often correct the record or say, no, that's not true.
Mm.
This is what it is, or I didn't do that, or I did do this.
Absolutely. Of course it is.
Right.
Yeah.
It's one of the worst things you can do. And
Is
here's
that
why.
right?
Yeah. So with your ex, they are telling your child what to think. And usually we talk about, well, one of the big alienation factors we talk about is sending poisonous messages about you from their
Yeah.
other parent, that you are either unsafe, unloving, or unavailable. So when they're coming at you and saying those things that they've heard from your other parent who's bad mouthing you, um, you wanna fix it. But when you fix it and you say, "No, that's not true, it's really this," you are doing the same thing because you're telling your child what to think. You're not showing respect for their ability to figure out what's real and what's not. And you have to understand that children generally love both parents. They consider both of you authorities. So when they're telling one thing and you're saying another, a child experiences cognitive dissonance because they're like, "Okay, my parents don't lie to me, but they're telling me completely different things.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to do." Like, I
Yeah.
don't I don't know who to believe. Um, so for you instead to when they come at you with these vicious messages, they're basically parroting what your ex is saying to them, and you're just like, "This is crazy. I can't believe this. It's so harmful to my kid," is to put the truth to the side of what it actually is and
Mhm.
understand we have to deal with their feelings first. They're dealing with a lot of anger, fear, sadness, grief, etc. So for you to sit there and take it, I'm not talking about them being totally disrespectful on and on and on, but to
Yeah.
understand that they are really, really suffering. So for you to just say, let me hear what you have to say. I'm so sorry that you feel that way. I want to hear more of like why you think I'm like that and get them to just keep talking and talking and talking and just take it and deal with the truth later, but be like, I'm the one who's not gonna sit here and tell you, you're not allowed to feel this. You're not allowed to feel this. You're not allowed
Yeah.
to think this. I'm gonna just say, I'm here.
So
I'm
defending
here.
yourself is
I love you.
essentially not validating their feelings, and so they're just gonna
Exactly.
get defensive, and they're just
Right.
gonna fight you, and then they're gonna believe the thing you don't want them to believe.
Right.
Whereas, if you just try to keep your distance and you inspect their feelings, you validate their feelings, and you inspect their rationale, the claims will fall apart on their own, and then you become the credible parent, and and the other parent is the non-credible parent.
I mean, I think back to that message from Mark, that Izzy's therapist, who was like, even though he's raging at you, you have to stay firm. Like,
Yeah,
you cannot just be like, leave me alone, go away,
yeah,
you know? And it makes me think of like what you mentioned, Tasha Shore, Parenting Boys Peacefully. She's got some amazing content, and she talks about how putting kids, like when they're explosive with you and you say you need to go sit away, like get away from me,
yeah.
that basically is teaching kids that they have to behave a certain way for your
To
love.
be with you. I know.
Right.
I struggle with this. My
I
daughter,
mhm.
who
I
is 3 years old, is going through a phase right now where she gets really, really ugly, and it makes me really mad,
Yeah.
and I don't want to be really mad at her, and so, like, I feel like I have to get away from it, but I also know that getting away from it is punishing her for, is creating that situation where she feels like she has to behave and suppress what she feels in order to be around me, and I don't know how to manage that. I'm
Well,
really
okay, so I
struggling.
mean, I don't know if that's the same thing. Like my daughter at 3 had her terrible twos at 3, and she like it would be nothing. Like I'd say, "Do you want a cheese stick?" "I don't
Yeah.
want it." I'd be like, "Okay." And then she'd be like, "I don't want it." And then it would blow up for an hour
Yes.
screaming. And so I put her in a room and shut the window so the neighbors didn't think I was killing her, because
Right.
I thought she just needs to blow it off, and she did, and it happened every single day
Right.
over nothing. So
Right.
I found that when I did engage with her, and it's different with different developmental levels, it would just extend it and extend it, almost like
That's
the
right.
fuss period where it's like
Yeah.
overstimulating them. And you just need to like sit here. I'm not punishing you. I'm just being like, I can't help
Hey, we're
you.
gonna take a break here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's different.
Yeah. It's definitely different, and the strategies and the tactics are different for boys and girls. That's
Right? And different ages and different personalities, so it has to be customized, but it is not easy, but especially in the moment, it's almost like you need to have a plan ahead of time. You need to know, "This is what's gonna happen. How am I gonna deal with it? Because it's happening."
yeah. Yeah. That is great advice. That is absolutely great advice. And you can do that exercise. Just sit down for 15, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, and just, you know, map out the decision tree.
Right,
You know,
instead of
what
having
did I
that
miss?
toxic hope of, like, maybe today they'll stop, it's like, "No, they're not.
Yeah.
They're not gonna stop today."
Yeah. Yeah, and it's important to do that analysis and that planning when you're removed from the situation because it's then then you're kind of on autopilot. You don't have to worry too much about what you're going to do, and you can be proud of how you responded because because you responded in a way that was thoughtful because you could still think back when you came up with the plan as opposed to when you're in the thick of it you're in your other brain, you're in what I call the Conan the Barbarian brain,
Yeah,
and you know there's no planning, there's no thinking that's happening in that brain.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think humor is also very, very helpful. Like, I know when the kids were little and they'd be, like, really mad, I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, you want me to, like" I
I
mean,
did
I
that
hope
too.
this is okay, like, "You want me to rip my arm off or do you" and they'd be like, "What?" Like, just sort of
Yeah.
surprise them.
You know, and but as with all things, there's a tension there too. I often deflect with humor
Yeah.
and in ways that are healthy and unhealthy. And I once got in a situation where, and so I was doing this to the boy all the time. He would get very upset, and um, and this is something that I suspect Tasha Shore would have advised me against if I'd known about her back then. The boy would get very upset, he'd start crying, and the crying, I guess, made me feel like a bad dad, and so I would try and
Mhm.
stop the crying, and I would stop
Yep.
the crying by making him laugh, and
Uh-huh.
then and at one point in time, he's a wise little kid, man. At one point in time, he goes, "Dad, stop," and he's, like, kinda lying laughing and kinda crying. He goes, "I'm so frustrated. You just won't let me feel what I feel."
Wow.
I was like, "Oh my gosh. He's totally right. Like, let me be
Wow.
sad, man." And so, yeah. And so I started doing that. And there's a tension. Like sometimes I'll make him laugh and sometimes I'll let him cry it out. And it's
Yeah.
different now.
It's so hard. I know, with my partner, with Chris, sometimes he'll be like he'll recognize, he's like, "I as a man, I feel like I wanna when you tell me things that are upsetting to you, I just wanna fix it, but you
Yeah.
don't want me to fix it sometimes, you
Yeah.
just want me to listen." I'm like, "Mm,
Yeah.
yeah,
It is anathema to, I think that's like an anathema to men in general. And it's particularly anathema to guys like me who are engineers.
uh-huh,
Um, you show me something broken, I need to fix it.
right."
Uh, and like just sitting with the discomfort is not natural to me.
Yeah, but that's so
Mhm.
important to even recognize is
Yes.
that I have
Yeah.
to it's something that you have control over and but it's not comfortable. But
Yeah.
I realize I don't think I answered your question as one way to sort of prevent this.
Yeah.
And I was interviewing a child psychiatrist who happens to be local. I met her in real life and she's from Romania, but she works with kids from 3 to like 20, and she said that kids want 2 things more than anything else:
Mm.
control and attention. And
Yeah.
so she talked about something called the 10-minute rule that I think is applicable for any parent. She
Yeah.
said, if you, for 10 minutes, when you have time, when you're with your kid, to say, I really like how you do this, or I'm really interested in something that you're interested in. So, for
Yeah.
example, even if it's a video game, and I made this mistake, I probably should have done this with Izzy when he was interested in video games. Instead of being like, I don't care about video games, I should have said, you know what? I know you love this game. Can you show me can you explain it to me and can you show me how to play it? Where the kid feels like they're leading and they have your full attention. And I think back to when I was a little girl, like with my dad, part of why I think we had this bond was because he really did spend time with me. Like I
Yeah.
remember so many things where he'd come home from work, he'd stand on his head in the middle of the living room, and I was a gymnast, so I loved, like, we turn on music. I have two sisters, so we just like dance around and act silly. He taught us how to do dive rolls over him. He would take me for walks every Sunday down the hill to get the newspaper at the store, and he'd let me buy like a little thing from the vending machine. I still have all those little plastic like toys in my jewelry box from when I was a child. We would take walks for ice cream. Like we always had something that we did together that was just me and him, even though, I had siblings. So
Yeah.
spending that dedicated time, even when we didn't, we didn't talk about like our feelings or open up to anything. But
Right.
as I got older, like he was always an athlete. So
Yeah.
he was a wrestler, and him and his brother would go down to Manhattan to the New York Athletic Club, and they taught me how to keep time, and I got to throw in the white towel, so I was part of that. Um,
Wow.
like he took me jogging. I remember when I was 21 when I had my first like awful heartbreak,
Yeah.
and I was just crying and crying in the bathroom. I was back from college, and my dad's like, "We're gonna go out. We're gonna go out for a jog. Like, you don't need to say anything to me, but I'm just gonna like keep this routine that we've had all this time." So having that steady, consistent presence in my life,
Yeah.
I think that's really helped me a lot. And I think that for any parent listening, to have any kind of little rituals, like these are the things your kids are gonna remember.
That is absolutely right. I love that 10-minute ritual. We've abused Tasha Shore on this, but she has a name for that. I think she calls it special time, and it's exactly what that is. It's 10 minutes. The child directs what the activities are, and you just and it's one parent per kid, and each parent has their own special time, and it's a beautiful suggestion. I'm going to implement that today. I'm going to do
Yeah.
it starting today. It is such an important thing. I'm so glad I found out about it.
Yeah, I think it's really made a difference with my own kids
Yeah.
in making sure I have time with them even as they're
Yeah.
young adults. And Izzy was saying the other weekend, Izzy and I went up, we took a road trip up to this cute little town in upstate Connecticut, and we're just walking around, and Izzy said, "Mom, they say that that by the time a kid is 18, that they will have spent like 90% of their time, like the time that you would have had, it's already 90% gone." However you say it, like
Yeah.
now it's just a little bit of time because he's an adult, and he's like, I
Yeah.
don't think we fit that. I think we still spend more than
Yeah.
10% of our time together." So
Yeah.
I'm really
Yeah.
happy about
What a
that.
what a what a profound and kind of horrifying thing is 90%
They
of the time you spend with your kid
they're
is
under
before
18.
they're 18.
Yeah, and then
How
that's it.
brutal.
I know, I
How
know.
brutal.
But it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be true.
It doesn't. Yeah, that's
But
right.
it's you
You
establishing
you
a
have to.
relationship where your kids wanna spend time with you
That's right.
when they become adults too.
Yeah.
Like me
That's
and my dad having lunch every week. I
yeah.
want to.
Yeah, it's not true for your dad. Yeah, that's not true for your dad. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. Well, Lisa, I've absolutely loved this conversation. Before I let you get out of here, um, I really like to ask everybody the same question to finish things off. And so, if you're standing in the gap for the next generation, and you can only convey, you can give a parent one principle to help them raise a son of virtue and emotional intelligence and excellence. What is that principle? What is the raising men bottom line for you?
It kind of goes into what we were just talking about, is the most important thing is to establish a relationship with your son where
Yeah,
they feel like they can talk to you about whatever it is. That will protect them from all kinds of abuse with not just, scary people, but even in the workplace where they can tell you anything.
yeah,
I think it's so important, especially for boys who have a hard time opening up. Our culture does that to them. They're not allowed to express themselves. But where you have a son or a daughter, and I have both, and so do you, where they feel like they can tell you anything and you're not gonna come at them or judge them, you're just gonna accept it. I
yeah,
think it's really helpful for them, and also as a parent to feel like, my kid wants to spend time with me, like, that makes me feel really happy. We just went to Alaska together, that was my daughter's graduation present, it was just me, her, and Izzy, and we did a huge road trip and went all over, and it was one of my favorite
amazing.
vacations, and I thought,
Yeah,
"I am so lucky that I have these kids who actually, are taking their vacation time to spend with me." Of course, after he was like, "Mom, you drove me crazy. We're never sharing a
right.
cabin together."
We don't need to spend so much time together
Yeah, next time
in
we're
the
getting
next few
separate
weeks. Yeah,
lodging. But
right,
but
right.
we did have a pretty good time. So, I think doing what you can to cultivate a relationship with your child, because the people I work with, there's a lot of situations where kids cut off a parent. So you want to make yourself bulletproof to that. And that starts with you taking the time, even those 10 minutes a day, to really focus on your kid, because this is going to be your family, like, for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So why not do the best you can?
You don't have a choice of whether or not these people are going to be in your family.
Yeah.
You're stuck with them. You might as well make it awesome.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
try.
Yeah. 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 Do what you can to make it awesome, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that sentiment. Thank you so much, Lisa, for spending the time. Really appreciate it. It's been wonderful having you on Raising Men.
No, my pleasure.
The book is called When Your Ex Turns Your Kids Against You. You can find that and more with the links in the show notes. Remember, you are a great parent. Raising Men is produced by Fio Hernandez. This episode was edited by Ralph Tolentino.